Come along with me today as I show you my sourdough routine. I found this recipe several years ago and it was not a sourdough recipe, and I've turned it into one, and it is the easiest one that I have seen out there. So we'll go through the bread recipe in a minute here, but every time I make bread, I always have it in the fridge and I just take it out. And here you can see I have parchment paper on the counter and I'm loafing up this batch of bread. And I find that 2 loaves for this recipe is perfect. I love the parchment paper, but I know there's other things, or you could just drop it straight into the pan. But for me, parchment paper makes it super easy to take it in and out of the hot Dutch ovens. So I'm going to set my bread aside here on the back and let it rise while I preheat my oven to 450. And while I do that, I always start a new batch of sourdough bread to go into the fridge. So I add 4 cups of warm water to this pot, or you can do a bowl or some kind of a container that has a lid. And to that I'm going to add 1 to 2 cups of active starter and 2 tablespoons of salt. Now to the sourdough starter, the salt, and the water, we're going to add 8 cups of flour and mix that in really well. Once I add in the flour, I'm going to give it a really good stir to make sure that we get everything mixed around and incorporated. I love this recipe because it's easy in this busy season of life that we're in right now with a newborn to easily be able to keep fresh bread on hand, and it can stay in the fridge for up to a week. So as we're going throughout the week, if I need bread, I just pull it out, bake it up, and make a new batch. And so there's always bread sitting in my fridge ready to go, and that way I don't have to stress about, do we need bread right now? Do we have it? All of that. It's there and it's always ready and waiting. When I found this recipe about 5 years ago, it made bread making so easy. There was no kneading, there was no extra ingredients. It was just plain, simple, wonderful, amazing tasting bread that was always in the fridge. If I had company come over and I didn't know they were coming over, it was easy to bake up bread. At a drop of a hat, we always had bread. We could change up the menu, and it made life for me as a mom so much easier. So then once I started getting more into sourdough, it was one of those things where I really wanted to incorporate sourdough, and a lot of the recipes were these long drawn out things that were complicated and were at times frustrating because I had to weigh everything out. And so I thought, you know what, I love this bread recipe that I have been making for years. Is this something that I can just switch over and do for my family? And so I tried it. And I was a little nervous at first because if you have a whole big batch of bread completely flop, then you have a whole bunch of breadcrumbs to use. But it worked out amazingly well, and so I have changed to using this for my sourdough bread. So you can see in this recipe I added a little bit more flour. It's a little denser, so I think it was 10 cups of flour instead of the 8, and that's just because I like to use this recipe across all different kinds of bread, so it's going to be an English muffin dough. So now I'm going to get my sourdough starter up and going again. I'm going to feed it. So to feed it, I just add in 2 cups of flour and then enough water to become thick pancake consistency. I like my starter to be a nice thick starter, otherwise I find it easily separates and it doesn't seem to be as nice and foamy and bubbly and easy to keep to make good fluffy bread. I really think that sourdough bread should be something that is easy for us to do and that doesn't take a lot of extra effort, especially in these times when we already feel like we're so overwhelmed with everything going on. Once my starter is refed, I just go ahead and put it straight back into the fridge. I have my oven now preheated, so we're going to go ahead and bake our bread. And once it's been in a 450 degree oven for about 45 to 50 minutes, I'm going to pull it out and it's going to look like this. And the Dutch oven just helps trap the steam inside so that the bread can easily expand. Now if you don't have a Dutch oven, that's okay. You can use a bread pan and kind of tent tinfoil over the top so it leaves room for the bread to expand. You can also use a glass baking dish and do the exact same thing with tinfoil, or if it has a lid, that works too. Check the description for an outline of how I easily do my bread routine as well as the recipe from today. Thanks for watching.